During one funeral procession in the cemetery, several children separated from the adults and began to wander between the graves. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a dog that was lying near one of the gravestones. When they called him, he only wiggled his ears but did not move. When the kids tried to get closer, it growled softly, and suddenly they heard a woman's voice behind them. "The owner of this dog is buried here, and he won't leave him of his own free will." This was said by a homeless woman. She went to the dog and gave him some food. Seeing the interest in the children's eyes, she sat down on the bench and began her story. His name is Sergeant. Once he was a friendly dog, but now he does not even allow himself to be stroked. When he appeared at the cemetery, he was constantly whining and barking, as if he wanted to wake his owner, but now he calmed down. At first, people were driving him out of the cemetery. Then he was hiding in a bar nearby and was coming to the grave late at night. His owner was in the police. He hung himself in the forest. He must have been depressed. Suddenly, the children heard their parents calling them and ran away. Several months had passed. Winter was over. The snow had already begun to melt, but it was still cold. The dog was still in the cemetery. He was fed by workers and visitors so that the animal did not starve. One evening, the dog heard a sound that alerted him. The van was driving very slowly through the cemetery. When the car stopped, two people got out of it. They opened the trunk, took out a large black bag, and started dragging it to a nearby lake. "Fast! We can't stay here for long," one of them whispered to the other and suddenly screamed in pain. The fact was that the dog had grabbed his hand. The second person was confused and did not know what to do. He thought it was a wolf that came running from the forest. Meanwhile, the first man managed to get a knife and began to stab the dog with it. After a while, the dog let go of his hand but did not run away. Bleeding out, he continued to attack both of them. And although they tried not to make noise, their cries as well as barking attracted the attention of people in the vicinity. Having taken their guns, they ran towards the noise. When they saw that it was the sergeant who had attacked the strangers, they knew that something was wrong. After all, the dog never left the grave of his owner. Meanwhile, the exhausted dog lay down on the ground and whimpered. He remembered that such a scenario had already happened in his life. When he was a little puppy, he was also put in a bag and thrown into the lake. Then he was lucky as he was saved by a man who became his owner. When the people opened the bag that the bandits were carrying, they saw that there was an elderly man in it. He said that his name was Nicholas, and he came from another city for fishing. He left his minivan in the parking lot and went to the lake. After catching some fish, he decided to take a walk through the forest and came across two people who were sitting around the fire. Nicholas asked them for permission to warm himself and sat down by the fire. They began to talk, and the men became very interested when they heard he had come by car. They wanted to know where Nicholas had left it. Realizing that something was wrong, the old man said goodbye to them and was about to leave, but they attacked him. They hit him on the head and put him in a bag. He woke up just now from the rising noise. It turned out that the two men were fugitives. They wanted to take possession of his car and get rid of the old man. When Nicholas realized that Sergeant had saved him, he wanted to take the dog to the clinic. Although the local people told him that it would be better for the dog to die. Fortunately, the dog recovered. Sergeant stayed with Nicholas. He never returned to the cemetery again. He seemed to let his first owner go.